All right, we have our mid-season review. We're taking a look at the strong markets, struggle, expansion talk, and new trademarks. This has been something I've been playing around with for a while. So we'll get into what's kind of going on here as we look at the halfway point of the 2024 UFL season, taking stock into which franchises are doing well, which ones aren't, who could be coming, who can be going. I have talked to a lot of people within the league, people outside of the league, trying to get a gauge of kind of where things are moving and how people are feeling about things. And this is kind of the culmination of that in this article that I wrote. So, of course, the markets that are looking good for the 2024 season, because here's the thing that there is going to be some kind of change next year. We'll get into that. But one of the things I want you to pay attention to, and that this kind of really signaled it for me. So we'll talk about the markets that are looking good for 2024. So, of course, St. Louis Battlehawks and DC Defenders, no question about that. Birmingham Stallions and Arlington Renegades. Now, if you noticed, there was a thing that the UFL came out with their they had these new jackets, and it wasn't all the teams, but it was just a handful of teams, and those were DC Defenders, Birmingham Stallions, Arlington Renegades, St. Louis Battlehawks. Those four teams. And I was like, that's kind of interesting because these markets are not going anywhere. St. Louis is St. Louis, DC, great market. Birmingham Stallions, they have a relationship. You can't shut down the two-time champion. Their venue is kind of questionable. Every time there's a rainstorm, they got to evacuate. Is it the best market? But they can't get rid of it at this point, and with the partnerships and whatever. And of course, the Arlington Renegades are kind of doing mid, but they have their agreement. Remember, they got paid by the city. That's the hub of the UFL, so they can't get rid of the Arlington Renegades. And I think the San Antonio Brahmas, while they're not the AAF, or I think they are coming along. They have Wade Phillips. They got an exciting team. They've got a good venue. I think they'll be fine. And I think they've all demonstrated that their market is viable. They've got enthusiastic crowds. They're generating buzz locally. The Battlehawks are definitely generating a lot of buzz locally, where DC and some of the other markets are starting to build interest. So I think those franchises are fine. And this is stuff that I'm hearing from talking to other people as well. Now, on the other hand, there's other teams that have faced difficulties attracting fans and generating excitement. The Michigan Panthers, Memphis Showboats, and Houston Roughnecks have all struggled to gain traction in their markets. And each team has its kind of unique challenges, but these are the franchises that I would keep an eye on. Michigan Panthers, I mean, remember, Michigan Panthers, Memphis Showboats have been around for multiple seasons and still has not generated any juice. So it's not like this is the first season of them. Houston Roughnecks, they get a reprieve. They're at a different stadium. Things have kind of moved around, but Houston is a good market, and it is a football town. I mean, they want to keep three teams in Texas. So I think Houston is fine, but they have been struggling, and maybe I don't think, I think they'll be fine, but they are definitely struggling this season. Now, expansion is the key, is what people like to talk about. So multiple people that I've talked to, and that was they have all confirmed that this was part of the merger agreement. Remember, the government was delaying things. Part of it was because they were going from 16 teams to 8. And so as a compromise, they said, we'll let you start with 8 for the 2024 season, but then you have to expand to 10, maybe 12 in 2025. I don't think they'll go 12. I think 10, or there might be a shuffling, but I believe that I don't know if they have to. I mean, who knows? This can all be negotiated, but that's kind of currently what the deal is. And they're actively exploring more new markets right now as we speak, and they have been doing that for quite some time. So there's possibility that some current teams may be put on pause or just folded altogether to add stronger markets to join the United Football League. Now, one of the interesting things over the past 2 months, I haven't talked about it on the show. It's been talked about on social media, but the Fox-owned arm of the United Football Leagues, that's the USFL Enterprises LLC, has trademarked several names, which of course fuels this speculation. The Canton Bulldogs, Ohio Bulldogs, and Nashville Tuners have all been trademarked recently, suggesting that these cities might be in the mix for future teams. It's funny because the XFL in 2020 was very hidden about their trademarks and not getting things out. They were very coy about all that stuff. These leagues, I mean, we knew that the United Football League was a trademark thing for a while, so it was no shocker. They don't play those tricks because I think they're just trying to survive. So, additionally, also in the past week, the Aviators name and the Conquerors logo, both franchises that were part of the Spring League. Remember, the Spring League was Fox's precursor to the USFL, run by Brian Woods, have been trademarked also by the USFL Enterprises LLC. Could those names be used for another franchise down the road? We don't know. That may be a location that they are potentially looking at that they don't have a name yet. Now, I'm telling you what I'm hearing is that Canton is not on the cards. There's just not enough strong market. Remember, you're trying to build this. You need strong markets. Like maybe they could be an expansion team if you're going to 16 or 18 or something like that. But right now, you're just trying to get at least 8 solid markets. And right now, you have about 5, which potentially 6 with Houston if they can kind of get their act together. So I think Canton is out. I think Ohio is questionable. The one that I'm hearing is that Nashville could potentially be things. So a Nashville team, a good market. Nashville Tuners could be something to keep an eye on. Now, as far as new teams on the XFL side, remember we have the XFL, Dwayne John, like that, that own half, and then USFL side owns half. There's been no talk of any new teams, but it would be likely, from what I'm hearing, that the Seattle Sea Dragons or the Orlando Guardians would be one of the teams to return. Seattle Sea Dragons and Orlando Guardians both outperformed the USFL franchises, including the 2-time champion Birmingham Stallions in attendance and interest. And I think one of the things that's impacting this league is now that you're down to 8 teams, and if you think about it, I was talking to my wife about this, is that in 2020, XFL News Hub was just crushing it. And then, COVID happened. 2023, it was about half of what the interest was. And then this year, we had to restart a new site. We're in the Google sandbox. So it's hard to tell, but definitely nowhere near as it was last year. And part of the reason, I believe, is that when the 2020 season, they were in Los Angeles, huge market, even though the, attendance wasn't that great. And then New York, also huge market. So having these huge markets just in general brings in more fans. So like, I love Canton. I don't want Canton to have a franchise. Give me a market like Philadelphia that has more people, because those are more people that will be interested in the product. So they have to go out for bigger markets. Seattle is a good market. Orlando was a good market. So I really think that Seattle Sea Dragons could be back next season. Whether they get rid of Memphis and add Seattle, or they go to 10 teams, we'll just kind of have to see how that all plays out. Again, this is all a fluid situation. So potential rumored locations for 2025, several cities have emerged. Philadelphia, I've heard New Orleans, and I've heard Nashville. And of course, you have the Nashville Tuners trademark. So that kind of adds fuel to those things. Again, Nashville, New Orleans, Philadelphia, good markets. You want a big, sizable market to bring in fans. You don't want to go into Idaho, or some small town. We'll say Canton, even though Canton could potentially draw from Cleveland, um, maybe Cincinnati, maybe they could be the central hub of all Ohio teams. I don't know, but then I just don't know if that works. But a city like Philadelphia, example, is like one of the largest cities in the country. Is in that top 10 list. New Orleans, Nashville. So that's kind of where we want to stick your flag down in a large market. Now, being said, there's no way that they're going back into any California and New York is off the table between taxes and insurance costs, and especially California is just not even like on the radar. And it's a shame because San Diego would be a perfect spot to basically have your St. Louis Battlehawks 2.0, but because of how all the taxes and insurance policies and all this other stuff that's outside of just finding a stadium, I've heard that they're just not even looking at those kind of markets. Now, what it looks like now, it's been interesting over the last couple of weeks. UFL President Russ Brandon, Daryl Johnston, Director of Football Operations, have made a strong push in the Memphis market. They were both boots on ground, doing press. Daryl Moose Johnston was doing press on radio shows and TV shows. Also, they're doing a bobblehead. Have you noticed that they're the only ones? I mean, forget about what people say. It's read the tea leaves and what they're actually doing. They're doing a bobblehead night, which is awesome. I want a bobblehead. Bobbleheads were always a staple for Major League Baseball and minor league baseball marketing to draw people in. To me, this feels like a last ditch effort to breathe life into that market. Even though Fred Smith, the FedEx owner, was the guy who wanted the team there, it is just not juicing at all. And it's a shame because I think it would be a great market. It's kind of one of the smaller markets. Fred Smith having his money involved in the league would be a good thing, but just the league is just not. It's just, I mean, this team has been around for a while, and a bobblehead giveaway, which no one else is doing, I think shows that they're pouring money and effort into that location to see if they can get it going. And I think this, to me, feels like a last ditch effort. Like if they come out of this thing with 8,000 fans or 7,000 fans, then it's just the market is just not there. They could pause it for Fred. I mean, I think the idea is that he would be definitely an owner in UFL team, but I mean, he's not going to buy a team unless he buys it now and takes over the marketing effort. But just right now, it's just not. All the UFL locations are just not doing as well as the XFL locations are. Michigan has a good team, but again, their attendance numbers also continue to decline. If there's no ownership, Michigan is a good market, but if they're not, they've been around. All these teams have been around for basically 3 years, and if they haven't had any kind of foothold now, what makes to say what you're just going to throw some money at it that it will? Maybe it's better off to go in other directions. So while the situation is fluid and subject to change, here's some of my predictions about potential 10-team lineup for 2025 based on the need for the UFL to generate revenue and the ease of maybe being in a fresh market could generate a lot of excitement. You don't have that legacy hangover from the USFL teams and their prices and everything like that with Memphis and Michigan. So if you go into Philadelphia, for example, that's fresh, that's new. You're not having, $10 ticket prices and giveaways and all this other stuff that you had 2 years ago that fans might have expect. So the XFL division teams staying: St. Louis, DC Defenders, Renegades, Brahmas. I think adding the Seattle Sea Dragons is probably more likely than anything else. In the USFL division, Birmingham Stallions, even though they're kind of Houston Roughnecks, I think they'll get a reprieve because of the stadium situation, and they're a good market. Remember, they were a good market in 2020. So I think they'll be fine for there. But I definitely put them on the list just because you've seen their numbers are dwindling. I think either Memphis or Michigan stays, and one of them goes. I don't think both of them will be back next year. I would probably lean towards Michigan because of all the stuff that's going on with Memphis. Is like they're trying to revive this location to get some kind of juice going. Otherwise, they have to kind of move on. I think adding new locations in 2025 in the USFL division, I think Nashville is looking like we got the trademark. It's a good location. Nashville, and it's something new. New Orleans, I've heard bringing back the Breakers. New Orleans is a good town. And then, of course, Philadelphia. Why not? The Stars. Philadelphia had a good team. Bringing those back, that's a good market as well. I would say maybe Nashville, I would be kind of leaning on as that location. But again, everything is fluid, my friends. So as we reach the midpoint, this is when we have to talk about a lot of fans are interested in seeing what goes on. And that's the thing I think that's affecting our sites. I mean, I think the television ratings are great. That has been that's been no question. So now look at the markets that are very interested in the league and stick a team in there, and then you're off to the races. So they're getting data. I think the ratings are good. I think the way they have the television package set up, even though you had overlap games, I think that's fine just to get them on national television. It's so much better to have 2 games on Fox than putting 1 game on FS1, if that makes sense. So I think that they have down pat. So we'll have to kind of see. But I put in here that the runway, I mean, I had talked to a bunch of people, and everybody, including people within the XFL and USFL, were stunned about the merger. They were all surprised that it happened. They knew figured it was going to happen eventually. It happened a lot sooner. Because of that, I think the runway towards another season or 2 is shorter. Like they have to get their act together now.